Good morning. This today we take up in class 11 in English. We take up the lesson The Address. Yesterday we talked about how Miss Darling was boasting about the possessions, the antiques, the plates, vases, cutlery, and everything, and that is when the narrator stated that she has become so accustomed to seeing all these beautiful things and possessions every day that she has become so familiar with it. So she says that it is human tendency that you take things for granted. What she meant was that you only notice when something is missing. Now, naturally, she has grown up seeing all these things. So, when something is missing, then only does one notice or does one observe it. Why? And if something is out of place, that means something is missing from its place, that is a time when one can observe, or that is a time when one can notice about it, because either something has been sent for repair or it has been lent to somebody. So that is what she was explaining to Miss Darling. Again, I heard the unnatural sound of my voice, and I went on. Her own sound, her own voice seemed to be very strange to her, because she had not anticipated what she saw over here today. And Miss Darling was boasting about all the possessions which were actually the narrator's mother's. So she was not aware of that, of course. So she says that once she remembered that I remember my mother once asked me if I would help her polish the silver. So she's remembering that occasion, that when she was at home and she had been asked by her mother to polish the silver. It was a very long time ago, and I was probably bored that day, or perhaps I had to stay at home because I was ill. She cannot distinctly remember what was the reason, but it was a long time back. That is when she was either she must have got bored or she was unwell and therefore she had to stay at home. So she was wanting to do something. As she had never asked me before, that means her mother had never asked her to polish the silver before. I asked her which silver she meant, and she replied, surprised, that it was the spoons, forks, and knives, of course. So the daughter questioned her mother that which silver was she indicating to. So that is the time her mother was very surprised and astonished that the daughter was not aware that the cutlery that they used, the spoons, forks, and knives that they used for eating every day, that they were using daily, that they were of silver. She was very surprised, and that is the time, the day when she realized that their cutlery was made of silver. And that was a strange thing. That means it was, she was not familiar with that fact. I didn't know the cutlery we ate of every day was silver. So she says that that particular day she came to know that their cutlery was of silver, which she was not aware of before. The girl laughed again. I bet you don't know it is either. I looked intently at her. And now the narrator told her also, told Miss Darling, that just as she herself had not known, she was not aware that the cutlery was silver, likewise she felt that Miss Darling also was perhaps not aware that the cutlery that she used every day, that they used in the family every day, that was made of silver. What we eat with, she asked. She was very surprised. So innocently she asked that the cutlery that we use every day. Well, do you know? So I questioned her again. She hesitated, which meant that she was not sure herself. She walked through the sideboard and wanted to open a drawer. And look, it's in here. So she wanted to confirm and wanted to assure herself. So she walked to the sideboard and opened the drawer to look at the cutlery. I jumped up. Suddenly, the narrator got up. I was forgetting the time. I must catch my train. And suddenly, she spoke out that she had lost track of time and that she had to catch her train and she would get late. She had her hand on the drawer. Don't you want to wait for my mother? So Miss Darling naturally had invited her in because she wanted to meet her mother, but Mrs. Darling had not yet arrived. So she questioned her, or asked her that did she not want to meet her mother? No, I must go. I walked to the door, and suddenly and spontaneously, impulsively, she walked towards the door that she had to go. The girl pulled the door open. I can find my own way. That meant that she knew where the door was and she could leave easily. As I walked down the passage, I heard the jingling of spoons and forks. So, as she walked out of the house, she could hear that Miss Darling had opened the door, taken out the spoons and forks and knives. So, jingling is the light metallic sound when spoons and forks are shaken together. That is what she was trying to find out, that whether they were of silver as told by the narrator. At the corner of the road, I looked up at the nameplate. So as she walked out, and she read the nameplate again. Marconi Street, it said. It stated that on the board, the nameplate was Marconi Street. I had been at number 46. So she had visited the house 46 Marconi Street, the house where Mrs. Darling resided and the house where her mother's possessions had been kept. The address was correct, that she had arrived at the correct address, but now I didn't want to remember it anymore. Can you imagine that an address that her mother had given her years ago, that is 46 Marconi Street, the address of Mrs. Darling. For all these years, she had remembered this address. But now I did not want to remember it anymore. That now, from this moment onwards, she did not want to remember this address, which she had remembered for years and years. She says further, I won't go back there because the objects that are linked in your memory with the familiar life of former times instantly lose their value when severed from them. You see them again in strange surroundings. So what she meant out here was that I won't go back there. That is, that she had resolved that she will never return to this place again. Because the objects that are linked in your memory, the objects that over here that she is talking about, the possessions of her mother, with the familiar life of former times. That is, that these possessions were her mother's possessions and her belongings. But the memory, that is the life, the time that she has spent with her mother, those memories will be indelible. Those memories she will never forget, of course, of former times, the time she has spent with her mother. But she also says that instantly lose their value when severed from them. That means they have been removed from their house. They have been kept at Mrs. Darling's house. But not only have they been kept over there, they were not packed up in boxes or they were not kept in cupboards, but they had been used by the family. So now she did not have any sentimental value for them when severed from them. Severed means cut off. So she said that the belongings had been kept at Mrs. Darling, but they had not merely been kept, they had been used by the family as if it has always been theirs, which means that Mrs. Darling perhaps is not ever mentioned to the family. So, and you see them again in strange surroundings. That means the sentimental value that she had for all the belongings of her mother till now suddenly disappeared. Now she did not have any value for them because they have been removed from their house and they are now there at the stranger's house, that is at 46 Marconi Street, and they are being used by the family. So the sentimental value has been lost for her. She has no value for them now. And what should I have done with them in a small rented room? And she agrees with the fact. She is trying to assure herself. What is she trying to assure herself? That she is living in a small house, in a small room, where the shreds of blackout paper still hung along the windows. That is, the war had come to an end. The paper which had been pasted on the window panes had been taken off, but there were still a few shreds there. But now things were normal after the war. And windows and no more than a handful of cutlery fitted in the narrow table table drawer. So what she meant to say was that she was not able to accommodate all the stuff, rather she meant to say that all the belongings of her mother, she would not be able to accommodate all that in her house. So that is what she meant to say. So that is the reason why she walked away from the house, from the room, not ever intending to return, for the simple reason that she had decided, or she had resolved, that she will never come back, that she will never return. And secondly, that she would not be able to accommodate all that. I resolved to forget the address. I resolved means I was determined. I decided to forget the address. See, an address which she had remembered for so many years, suddenly she made a resolution, suddenly she was determined to forget that address. Of all the things I had to forget, that would be the easiest. So she says that this would be the easiest thing for her. Of course, the memories of her mother will always linger on. She will always remember her mother and the good times that she has enjoyed with her mother. But this was the resolve that she had. This was how she was determined that she will forget this address and never return. Thank you.